April 1918. Outside Lincoln, Nebraska. A farmer named Thomas Hendricks stood in his wheat field at dawn, watching the sun break through clouds that promised rain. He owed the bank $3,200. His 3 sons were in France with the American Expeditionary Forces. His hired man had left for factory work in Omaha at twice the wages. The wheat needed plowing, planting, and harvesting. He had 8 horses, 2 arms, and 16 hours of daylight. The mathematics didn't work. In 4 months, if he couldn't plant and harvest this crop, and the bank would take everything his family had built over 30 years. Thomas wasn't alone. Across the American heartland, thousands of farmers faced the same brutal calculation. World War I had drained the countryside of young men and driven up labor costs beyond sustainability. The very boom that had encouraged farmers to expand, wheat prices climbing from $1.05 per bushel in 1914 to $2.34 by 1918, had become a trap. They'd borrowed money under the Federal Farm Loan Act of 1916, bought more land, planted more acres. Now they couldn't work what they owned. And then a gray metal machine arrived at the train depot in town. 56 inches tall, 61 inches wide, 102.5 inches long. It weighed 2,920 pounds and cost $750. The name stamped on its radiator read, Fordson. Henry Ford had been tinkering with tractor designs since 1907, calling his first prototype an automobile plow. The idea wasn't new. Heavy steam traction engines had been working prairie farms for decades. Massive iron behemoths weighing 20,000 to 30,000 pounds that cost more than most farmers made in several years. What Ford did was apply the same revolution he'd brought to automobiles. Mass production, simplified design, ruthless cost reduction. Instead of a conventional frame, the Fordson's engine, transmission, and axle housings bolted directly together, creating the basic structure. The engine, a 4-cylinder unit displacing 251 cubic inches, generated 20 horsepower at the belt, 12 at the drawbar, 3 forward speeds, 1 reverse. It ran on kerosene, which was cheaper than gasoline. At the first production models rolled out of Ford's Dearborn, Michigan plant in January 1918. Ford didn't advertise it as revolutionary. He sold it as practical. 1 tractor could do the work of 8 horses. It didn't need to be fed when it wasn't working. It didn't require pasture land. A government test calculated that plowing with a Fordson cost 95 cents per acre, compared to $1.46 per acre when feeding 8 horses year-round and paying 2 drivers. The math was simple. The decision was hard. Farmers had worked with horses their entire lives. Their fathers had worked with horses. The knowledge was generational, trusted, proven. This gray machine represented uncertainty. What if it broke down during harvest? Who could fix it? What if Ford stopped making parts? The Eastern Implement dealer reported that Fordsons killed 36 drivers in 1918. The tractor's design created a fatal flaw. When a towed implement hit an immovable object, a buried rock, a stump, heavy clay, the reaction torque could flip the entire machine backward. Yet the Fordson was lightweight with a short wheelbase, which made it maneuverable but also deadly under the wrong circumstances. One Indiana farmer publicly stated it should be banned by law. But farmers were desperate. By mid-1918, over 6,000 Fordsons were working fields in Britain, Canada, and the United States. The British government had placed massive orders because German U-boats were starving the island nation. Ford supplied tractors to Allied governments at cost, understanding that feeding armies mattered more than profit margins during wartime. American farmers watched their neighbors. The ones who bought Fordsons in spring 1918 planted twice the acreage in half the time. They plowed from dawn until the kerosene tank ran dry, then refilled and kept going. The tractor didn't tire. It didn't need rest on Sundays. During wheat harvest, running a Fordson meant the difference between getting the crop in before rain or watching it rot in the field. Under this video, you'll see a subscribe button, a small action with a big meaning. By pressing it, Yet you're not only supporting the creation of more content like this, but you're also becoming part of the very exchange we've been talking about. Giving and receiving in harmony. It's not about the size of the action. It's about the meaning. A simple subscription tells me these words reached you. It tells me that the effort, the late nights, and the discipline to bring this message forward mattered to someone on the other side of the screen. If you want to see how mechanization transformed American agriculture forever, please hit that like button, and it helps us share more forgotten stories. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to the fields of 1918. Thomas Hendricks bought his Fordson in May. The dealer gave him 30 minutes of instruction: how to start the engine with the hand crank, how to engage the clutch, how to adjust the throttle. Then Thomas was on his own. The first day he plowed 3 acres. With horses, that same work took a full day and left both him and the team exhausted. The second day, he managed 5 acres. By the end of the week, he had a rhythm: start at sunrise, plow until midday, service the tractor, grease fittings, check oil, clean the air filter, refill kerosene, plow until dark. He finished plowing his entire 160-acre wheat allotment in 12 days. With horses, it would have taken 6 weeks. The 1918 harvest came in heavy. Thomas got his crop to market before prices fell. He made his loan payment with money left over. He wasn't unique. Across the Midwest and Great Plains, small farmers who'd been facing bankruptcy found a lifeline in mechanization. The numbers tell part of the story. Sales boomed through 1918 and 1919. By 1921, Ford was producing 36,781 Fordsons per year. By 1926, that number hit 99,101. In 1923, 75% of all tractors purchased in America were Fordsons. Ford held 3/4 of the entire tractor market. The price dropped to $625 in 1920, then to $395 by 1922, as Ford initiated a price war with International Harvester. At that price point, small farmers who'd never imagined owning a tractor could justify the investment. The impact went deeper than productivity. Tractors changed what was possible on the American farm. Land that had been dedicated to feeding horses, roughly 1/4 of most farm acreage, could now grow cash crops. Farmers no longer needed to hire seasonal labor for harvest. One person could manage operations that previously required a crew. The technology wasn't perfect. Early Fordsons overheated in summer. Engines failed, the worm drive transmission was difficult to repair, and parts availability varied wildly depending on location. Some dealers were competent, others useless. Farmers learned to improvise, to fabricate replacement parts in their own workshops, to modify and adapt. This wasn't the smooth technological transition that marketing materials suggested. It was messy, frustrating, occasionally dangerous. But it worked well enough to matter. By the early 1920s, the American agricultural landscape was transforming. The total number of farm horses and mules peaked at 26.7 million head in 1918, and the exact year the Fordson arrived in force. After that, the numbers declined steadily. Work stock dropped from 20.7 million in 1923 to under 10 million by 1945. Tractors freed up an estimated 1.5 billion man-hours in hauling and travel time, plus another 1.1 billion hours previously spent raising feed for horses. Those hours went into production, into diversification, into building the agricultural capacity that would help feed both America and allied nations through the next war. The Fordson's dominance ended in 1928. Henry Ford, needing factory space for the launch of the Model A automobile, simply exited the American tractor market. Production moved to England. International Harvester and John Deere seized the opportunity, introducing improved designs, the Farmall, the general-purpose models, with better ergonomics, hydraulic lifts, and power takeoffs that made the Fordson look primitive. By the 1930s, the tractor market had moved on. Most Fordsons from the 1918 to 1928 era don't exist anymore. Scrap metal drives during World War II took thousands. Others simply wore out and were abandoned. The ones that survived are museum pieces now, restored to gleaming condition that they never possessed when they were working machines. But the Fordsons' real legacy isn't in museums. It's in the structural transformation of American agriculture. The tractor made the small family farm viable in an era when labor was scarce and expensive. It gave farmers facing bankruptcy a tool to survive. Not all of them made it. Many still lost their farms during the agricultural depression of the 1920s, when wartime commodity prices collapsed and European agriculture recovered. But mechanization gave them a chance. For farmers like Thomas Hendricks, men and women who'd borrowed against their futures, who'd bet everything on wheat or corn or cotton, the Fordson represented possibility. It was loud, it was crude, it leaked oil and belched smoke and occasionally tried to kill you. It also plowed fields, pulled implements, powered belt-driven equipment, and did the work of 8 horses for 95 cents per acre. That gray metal box with the name Fordson stamped on its radiator changed what it meant to be a farmer in America. It bridged the gap between horse-powered agriculture and the mechanized farming that would dominate the 20th century. The men and women who bought those first Fordsons in 1918 were making a leap, leaving behind centuries of accumulated knowledge about horses, harnesses, and traditional farming methods, trusting their livelihoods to gasoline engines and worm-drive transmissions. Some of them failed. Many of them succeeded. All of them were part of a revolution. If this story of American agricultural transformation moved you, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us preserve these histories. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from.